I'm headed back to Orlando for another attempt at film photography with my Leica MP. My first trip was not a success because the film did not develop well, and we'll see if this time is any better. I have a new developer now and 2 new rolls of film, and this time I brought along my 35mm Summilux, a steel rim reissue. This is only my second time using the steel rim reissue on my Leica MP, and the film rolls will be Portra 800 and Tri-X 400, which is the first time I'm using black and white film. At the end of the video, I'll go over the results, but basically the Leica MP is so fun to use and shoot with, but the results are still very challenging and getting very frustrating. And you can skip to the end to find out which gear I'm giving up on and that I'm selling. I'll pick out some of the shots that I liked from this roll. There were actually very few shots that came out decent from this trip, but Portra 800 is becoming one of my favorite films to shoot with. This one was shot early in the morning, and I like this because of the soft lighting in the background and the greenery in front. I like the lighting and exposure on this one too, and the character of this image looks like it's also from the 60s or 70s. I took a few more random shots, and with this type of film, it's difficult to place exactly when this photo was made. Some of these photos look like they could have came from the 70s or 80s. The second roll was the Tri-X 400, and this was the very first time that I shot black and white on my film Leica MP. And this was even more challenging to shoot with. Maybe it wasn't a good day to shoot, or maybe not the right subject material, but I found that shooting in black and white was even more difficult to come out with a good result. As always, the Leica MP was such a pleasure to shoot with. It's so well put together and high quality and solid, and the mechanical feedback you get with shooting with this camera is much more satisfying than shooting with digital. But as far as the lens, I started noticing more and more drawbacks from using this lens. The positives are that it's very compact and light and balances well with the camera body, and the image is very sharp and it gives off that vintage character from this steel rim reissue. But operating this lens is just not that optimal. First of all, with the aperture ring, there's only two spots to grip it across from each other. So to change the aperture, you have to find those two spots that are ridged so you can turn the aperture ring. And that gets more annoying when using this with my analog camera because I'm very often switching the apertures to get the right exposure. And as far as the focusing ring, it does have an infinity lock. So when you turn all the way to infinity, it locks in place. And to change the focusing again, you have to press a very small tab to release the lock. And that also gets annoying because I often have it locked to infinity on accident. Even before this trip, I have been trying to pare down my lenses. So this lens was on the chopping block. And after this trip, I decided to sell this lens because it just was not that convenient to use on my Leica MP. Again, the lens is very lightweight and compact, and it produces great images and has a wide 1.4 aperture, but the controls are just not that convenient to use. So from now on, I'll be using my 35mm Summilux-M FLE. So overall, I'm making very slow progress with improving my film photography. I am experimenting with different film stocks and different lenses, so I'm learning more with each roll of film. But it is frustrating at how slow it is to improve. But I'm going to keep going with it. My next trip will be to New York City, taking my MP and the 35mm Summilux FLE. I'll bring along some Cine 800 film and hopefully get some nice nighttime shots.